Welcome to PropTech Pulse, the podcast that takes the pulse of prop technology in multifamily. I'm your host, Shelly Robinson, and each week we'll be diving deep into innovations, challenges, and the future of work in property technology and multifamily. From AI-driven property management to blockchain and real estate, we're here to explore how technology is reshaping the way we live, work, and invest in multifamily communities. Whether you're a property manager, a tech entrepreneur, an executive, or even simply curious about the future of living spaces, PropTech Pulse is your weekly dose of insights and inspiration. So let's sync our rhythms and get on with the show. It's time to take the pulse. Well, today we have Briant Cárcamo, who is with us on PropTech Pulse. Welcome to the podcast, Briant. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Shelly.
So why don't you tell our guests that are our viewers and listeners today, what's kind of brought you to this point in your career and journey?
That's a really great question. My background is really in multifamily. So I spent about 10 years working at both third-party and owner-managed groups as a quantitative analyst. That's really my training and background. And I've always been that spreadsheet guy at the company. Whenever we have to devise, crunch some numbers, think about business strategy, they came to me. And that was really where I developed a lot of my expertise and being able to create financial models and answer some of those quantitative questions. I even have a coworker who once told me that watching me do Excel caused him vertigo. And so if he's listening right now, shout out to you, Gary. Well, and so that's really my background, right? Being able to do that just really quickly and efficiently for multifamily. Eventually, I kind of rose to the ranks and became director of revenue management, where I was involved with setting pricing strategy for our portfolio. We had a portfolio of about 20 to 30,000 units. And I was really good at creating financial forecasts and projections. But when it came to doing it at a certain scale, I really felt that I was limited with the tools given to me kind of in my organization. And really this came to a head when we had COVID, and basically in 2 weeks, we lost 90% of our leads, and we had to make all these big decisions, right? And like, what are going to be our rent and occupancy forecasts? And we basically had no way to know what GPR was going to be this month or next quarter, the year. Are we going to meet our investment returns? And that's what really kind of led me down this path of thinking about really deeply how financial forecasting and budgeting should work in multifamily. And so 4 years in, we started a company Visibly to do exactly that.
What a great story. And I always like to point out, you experienced a real world day-to-day problem that a lot of people are like, well, this is just the environment that we have now, but you actually went out and sought to solve that problem. Our industry is full of problems that are solvable when people actually start to dive in and actually think of how they can make it better. So kudos to you for actually taking a problem. I know a group of financial analysts at a particular company who spend like 4 hours every Monday just doing manual spreadsheet analysis to come up with a weekly report. So big solvable problems to tackle in the industry. And I love hearing that. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, certainly. I think that it's interesting in multifamily how there's a lot of different problems across different verticals that might seem very esoteric. So you think, hey, how hard can budgeting really be, right? Isn't this just a calculator in the cloud, or there's different ways to skin that cat? But we've just thought so deeply about this one specific process, and we've got so much data to support some of the things that we're doing inside of Visibly that I think might be really interesting to dive deeper on, when we get to that part of the show.
Oh, I love that. Look forward to it. All right. Well, let's kick off the podcast with a couple of future in the bottle questions. What do you think are the top 3 things that you see changing in PropTech in the next 5 years in multifamily and rental housing?
That is a really interesting question because who has a crystal ball? But some of the things that I'm really taking a look at right now are, you got to be looking at this DOJ action case against RealPage and revenue management. I mean, it's just going to be so disruptive if there's actual regulatory action against using revenue management systems in multifamily, because it's so ingrained with how a whole generation of analysts and quantitative people and investment managers and asset managers have thought about pricing the apartments, right? So I'm definitely watching that really closely because it has so many downstream ramifications, not just in how you use revenue management software to price the apartments, but then how the on-site teams operate as well. So, I think everyone's waiting to see what kind of action is taken against them. Are they going to settle that? But if that goes against the industry, there have to be a ton of solutions that are going to pick up those pieces. So I'm definitely watching that trend. Second is going to be, one thing that I'm really interested in is M&A activity, deal volume. What are sort of the properties that are getting bought? And what kind of consolidation are we seeing in property management? We certainly have seen the really large top 50 NMHC players get bigger, right, year over year. And I'm curious to see whether there's different ways to structure property management where maybe it becomes a lot more integrated with these tech solutions, right? And certainly that's not a novel idea. There certainly have been PropTech firms that have, vertically integrated into property management. There's some notable cases there, but yeah, is there a new business model for property management? And technology is something that I'll be curious to see over the next 5 years.
That kind of automation workflows, manual task elimination, kind of that whole gamut of looking at every part of the work that's being done. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Especially on the CRM side, the resident experience side, right? Technology companies are there's a lot of point solutions and platforms that do this. What will it really require for them to just start buying some deals, right? And start doing this themselves. So I'm excited to see some interesting innovation there. And then the last one I think is going to be AI disruptions in legacy solutions, right? I think specifically when I look at AI, I'm thinking that there's probably going to be some kind of correction, some kind of bust to the AI hype cycle. Certainly it's a trend that's here to stay. And the things that I'm really interested in looking at is going to be how AI disrupts legacy BI solutions, which I always found incredibly challenging to set up, to manage. And so this whole reporting paradigm is about to change really fundamentally, I think, with the introduction of AI and AI agents.
That's really good insight to kind of the efficiencies it can create. What can it eliminate? What can it reduce? Yeah, great topics and good insights. How do you think, on that same note, how do you think work is going to change in multifamily in the next 5 years with those themes that are coming forward in PropTech?
Well, there's certainly a big divide generationally on, return to the office versus, working from home remotely. And maybe this is going to be an issue for mostly like corporate staff, right? Because on-site team members still have to show up and see residents. But yeah, I think that I'm interested to see how the office landscape changes as we sort of do these more like hybrid models, and whether the office becomes more centers for folks to do like socialization and like team planning rather than do actual work, and whether the work still gets relegated towards, everyone in their house and doing that, and sort of the comfort of their own homes. So I'm excited to see that. The thing about real estate is that it's so geo-specific, right? That you always still have business travel and you have to see the assets. So maybe our industry will always be more predisposed to kind of doing this hybrid model.
Yeah, it's the on-site portion when it comes to service delivery. There's cross-generationally, a lot of people like to be served in different ways, right? And then you get markets that still want a high level of in-person service, or class AAA properties who want a really high level of in-person service. So I think there's room for a hybrid on that. And then providing tools that actually create efficiencies so you don't need as many people to serve, So it's going to be interesting to watch over the next, I think even the next couple of years. It's rapidly changing. A lot of companies are focused on it, which is good.
Yeah, an interesting product is coming out, right, to help service those needs on the multifamily side.
Yeah, completely. Can you share a case study of a implementation your company has done that has actually significantly improved or created efficiencies with what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to sort of set the stage here, Visibly helps property managers with creating budgets and financial projections, right? And one of the things about budgeting that we're sort of trying to flip the script on is that we're trying to make it less of something that you have to do, kind of like doing your taxes. That's sometimes how people approach budgeting, right? We get it, per the management agreement, property managers, you got to do a budget for your asset managers. But we really want to try to see how we can translate the budget into not just a spreadsheet, but rather, your property's roadmap for achieving strategic goals, right? And what we see is that folks that don't do this correctly or manage this process adequately, it really ends up turning this huge source of risk for their organization that it could be, somewhat completely avoidable. Budgeting is not really just about speed, but it's about building confidence, right? Showing your team and your clients that you have a solid plan for the year ahead. And so, a case study that I can share is we had we work a lot with very large property managers who have to do this at a huge scale, right? Hundreds of properties at a time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And one of the things that was surprising, we were really focused on saving time and efficiency, and certainly we can help you write a budget in under 10 hours is the average time that it takes to complete a budget. But one of the most interesting pieces to budgeting, especially this year, is that we really saw how much tension there is between an asset management group and the property management group, especially in third party, right? Especially on the institutional side, right? Is institutional asset managers hire the third party managers. And what we saw was that sometimes the properties start going south, right? They start becoming insolvent. They don't have enough cash flow to help justify some of the expenses that they want to do. And so what we see is that the budgets start getting cut when it comes to the budget approvals process, right? And historically, this is done on a spreadsheet. And this is when people just start slashing the budget. But because we have invisibly ways to track the progress of the budget, we memorialize each stage of it. And we also document that budget review process. We really see this being a great way for property managers to document, right, where they agree and disagree with certain projections. Because, what you want to do if you're a property manager, you want to avoid in 6 months being so off budget that your asset manager starts coming after you for management fees or concessions, or, that relationship can be really destroyed, right, if you don't do this properly. And so one of the best case studies has been helping property managers not just do their budgets really quickly and efficiently, but then also having that opportunity to document whether they agree or disagree with some of the changes that the asset managers are doing. And that's really helping reduce a lot of risk for them.
So it creates accountability, which I think both sides, asset management and operations, a lot of times, if it does start to go south and you have to start to bring in the executive teams, you then have that accountability all documented in there. It keeps track of it over time. Like you were saying, old manual spreadsheets did not have that ability to do that. You would actually have a separate spreadsheet for your quarterly reforecast that you would then go try to marry to your original budget. But 10 hours for a full budget rather than like months or weeks in a budget room away from your property as a property manager, that is huge time savings.
Yeah, it's really huge. Yeah, I think there's sort of three components that go into how you can run a really efficient budgeting process. So one is going to be really meticulous data management, right? The folks who do this really well, they have their property management set up, their property management system really set up to operationalize the data and then put that into financial forecasting, right? The second one is going to be having a very accurate financial model, right? Like we get within 0.8% of forward 12 revenue forecasts. So we can get really detailed projections, and that way you can really rely on these numbers, right, for making operational decisions. And then the third is, it's not enough to just build a budget. You actually have to go and sell this to your organization, right? You have to sell this to executive leadership. You have to go sell this to your investors, to your asset managers. And so producing really high quality deliverables that help you get through the budget approval process is just so critical, right? To being able to manage all of these different relationships. And so that's ultimately what helps lead to, significant time savings here. Because in the legacy, method, just creating the spreadsheet itself times 100 properties or however many you have in your portfolio is already a huge time sink, let alone the time it takes to do all the manual work. But then a lot of the time gets spent on the budget approvals process at the executive level. And it's almost the exact opposite of what you want, because not only is this the group that costs you the most on an hourly basis, right? But also those are the folks that need to be thinking more strategically about the financial projections, the business plan, rather than the mechanics of getting this in. And so we help with kind of providing an end-to-end solution to that.
I love the whole idea, and you said this early in our conversation, that it's a roadmap. And it is. I have a whole book on road mapping your budget into a success plan. And a lot of times you'll get a new property manager that comes in mid-year. They look at the budget and it looks like Greek when you first come in. So It's really interpreting that into meaningful action throughout the year. So another great problem you're solving in the industry. I'd love to hear that. Awesome work.
And as you mentioned, new property managers, we see that there is a really big gap in financial and business acumen required to switch from operations focused on-site community manager to investment focused, which is what the regional manager position really requires, right? You need to sort of switch from, hey, I'm taking care of residents, to I'm making my customers happy and meeting investment returns, right? Which is what this is all about. And so because there's this gap in financial and business acumen, we see that a lot of traditional learning management system or learning and development teams don't really address this learning how to be a great financial analyst, right, at the community manager level. Because when you're a graduate, that's a year, right? There's not like specialized education that helps you hey, what's GPR? What's loss to lease? How do the trade outs that I get actually impact my financial statement? And so that's where we developed a whole set of curriculum and training modules inside of the product to help level up your community managers and start thinking like investment managers, which is going to be what they need to do to get to the next level.
I remember when I was a senior regional, we would spend hours with our property managers just trying to explain how to write variance reports for utilities. Anything you can do to really help it bridge that learning curve and bring the industry forward. The other thing that comes to mind, and I think this was 2017, the Institute of Real Estate Management published a study that said the multifamily industry was going to be short by 2020, 120,000 qualified property managers in the industry. And I do think that is true because it's kind of cycled its way through the industry with, I don't want to call it over promotion, but just the need for that expertise and those soft skills. So I love that you're addressing all of that with your platform when it comes to financial acumen. It's really needed in the industry. So,
yeah, and I would say that some of the biggest beneficiaries here are going to be the regional manager cohort, which is just such a vital component of a property management organization structure, right? Because when you have community managers that are not performing, all this work goes up to the regional manager, who's the one who sort of faces these two issues, right? Organizationally. One is they have to manage so many properties that how can they keep track of all of these different communication points? And in third party, they're the ones who interact with your asset managers the most, right? And then secondly, you can't even pass their payroll down to the properties, right? This is coming out of corporate payroll. And so you're already getting squeezed on margin right from the management fee. And it's already a super competitive landscape that you have to literally fight tooth and nail to keep your customers. And so if there's ways that we can help scale up the skill set of the community managers, that kind of moves upstream, right? And so now the regional managers can have more of a client-facing role where they're sort of being able to keep the customers happier or be able to kind of use them more tactically around the organization. And so we think really deeply about how to help scale the regional manager, even one level up VP cohort to really start, potentially even having more properties per regional manager, through software like ours.
I love that. What great problems you're tackling. Higher value time, higher value service, efficiency, great problem solving. So what is a tech solution right now that you can't live without?
The one that I can't live without, at least on the SaaS side, is going to be AI customer support, customer success. We're a very high touch, high service offering because we provide so much personal attention to not just how to use our software, but how to leverage our skill set to think critically about your financial projection, your budget. We answer everything from not just where do I click to increase my rents, but also how does my budget look, right? Is this the right rent trade out that I should be calculating? And so without I think some way to scale up our customer success resources and documentation, it would just be really challenging to do. Or at least we'd have to add a lot of headcount, which can be pretty prohibitive, right, for emerging PropTech solutions. So that's one of the things that I think is really interesting, just how we can get AI agents to become experts in your product. And maybe this is a new way forward in 2025 of scalable SaaS solutions, right, especially in vertical SaaS.
Well, that's actually really good information and feedback. 24/7 on-demand service, right? Service when you need it, the way you need it. What is a PropTech trend that you think may be overhyped?
At least on the development side, we're still trying to find good use cases for AI to write your own code that's like ready to publish, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think are going to be interesting trends will be whether PropTech firms or even multifamily firms are going to be able to use some of these like code generators like AI, ChatGPT, right, to create internal solutions, right, to some of the things that they're working on. I think that is still way too early. Certainly, there's interesting use cases on being able to create like really low level applications, but I think that still requires a little bit more maturity before they really take hold, especially on the enterprise side.
I like hearing that. And then, what's your bold prediction for multifamily in 10 years? If you could wave a magic wand, what's happening?
I think the renter class is here to stay. I think that home ownership is really going to take a nosedive. And I think the multifamily industry is really poised to create, I think a once in a generation, experience for Gen Z, for the rest of the aging millennials, right? To have, I think, a really wide variety of product types in multifamily that could serve kind of different interests and needs, right, and communities. Maybe suburbia is here to stay to some capacity, right? And some capacity will certainly, there's been so much money invested over so many decades, but I feel like that's meant to be disrupted somehow on the institutional kind of multifamily side.
And what do you think is driving the downward spiral of home ownership?
Oh my God, that's such an involved question. Certainly, we'll see the generational wealth transfer and who it benefits the most, right? From boomers to Gen Xers. I think that's certainly driving a big piece of this, like how long boomers live and how much of that wealth gets transferred, and whether real estate is part of that transfer. That'll be really interesting. The second one is going to be, I think, cultural attitudes around, getting services without having to, save or spend a lot of money for that. You can see Amazon, grocery delivery, right? The subscription-based model, I think, lends itself really easily to, translate that into multifamily.
I hear, adventure on the minds of Gen Z a lot and wanting to live in many different places. And I think that remote work environment mixed with wanting to experience different places. I can even see like a multifamily subscription where you can kind of live where you want, and move when you want, or maybe it's so many times per year so that you can experience living, abroad and elsewhere. So it'll be fun to watch. If you could instantly implement any futuristic technology in all multifamily properties, what would it be?
That's a really good question. Any futuristic technology? I think I would say, I think maybe like an AI agent that helps you really go from move in to move out. I think that's definitely coming, right? Like that has to
almost
be coming.
Like your AI twin of your experience on the property. Yeah, that's actually really, I like that idea a lot. It gets to know you, right? It gets to know you in the ecosystem.
The wrong way, like where you're in your living room and you just yell out Charles and it just, does all this stuff for you and opens the blind. That has to be coming, right? Like pretty soon.
Put in my service request, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I think so. I think so for sure. All right, a couple more questions for you before we wrap up today. What advice would you give to multifamily professionals looking to stay ahead of the PropTech curve right now? Because there's so many conversations I'm having. There's even confusion about artificial intelligence still in the industry. And what advice would you give them?
I think the advice that I would give them is to stay focused on what generates tangible value for the portfolio. there's so many solutions. There's so many ways that, we can improve operations. And certainly there's a lot of hype around what AI can do in automating work and all these things. But our business is quite simple in a way, right? It's like we got to fix the properties and maintain them, and we got to keep our residents happy. And so ways that allows us to deliver that service faster to residents, and then also tools that help you manage your business better, whether you're a property manager, an asset manager, owner manager, whatever that configuration is. I think that's ultimately we have to sort of cut through the noise. What's going to really deliver tangible ROI to the portfolio? And there's just many opportunities to do that.
That's really good advice. I love it. Brian, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, you can find us at visibly.io if you want to learn more. And then we're also really active on LinkedIn.
Oh, I'm so glad. And thank you for joining the podcast today. This was really insightful. I love that you're disrupting the budgeting process and the data process and the property goals and outcomes process for all of these personas we talked about today. Thank you for your time. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks, Shelly.
And that wraps up another episode of PropTech Pulse. I hope this conversation has given you valuable insights and perhaps even sparked some ideas for your own PropTech journey. Remember, the future of multifamily is being written right now with every technological advance and innovative solution. So stay curious, stay connected, and keep your finger on the pulse of PropTech. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to PropTech Pulse on your favorite podcast platform and share this along with your colleagues. You can also find us on social media for bite-sized insights and updates. I'm Shelly Robinson, and until next time, let's keep innovating, disrupting, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in PropTech and multifamily. Let's build it together.